So you've come to the right place for people who want to talk about scenario analysis at 9:30 in the morning. And I'm glad that you mentioned that in your talks. So I think that a lot of the people who have been working with incorporating climate scenarios have really been looking at it from a medium to long-term perspective. But of course, this week, many of the conversations have been about the short term, really a lot of the short term effects that are coming through now, both from a transition, but certainly in a physical point of view. Do you want to comment on how to bridge this time horizon issue?
Yeah, sure. So the NGFS has launched its first scenarios, I think, already 3 years ago. And of course, it was a starting point, right? It was about getting a clue about, how can we model scenarios, how do we need to feed the models, and so on. And of course, it was at a very high level, not much of a difference between industries, regions, and so on. And of course, it was rather a long-term horizon. The further we get, the more it is, we realize, long-term scenarios are helpful to get a general understanding, but especially for supervising, you need rather a short-term or medium-term view. And so what we've decided to do is to develop new scenarios, rather not new scenarios, but also scenarios for, let's say, a horizon of 5 years or so. So this will especially help because they are used globally for stress testing for a lot of FSAs globally. And I think for them, it will be extremely helpful to have also this 5-year approach, right? So that's what we will do, but it will take some time. So I do not expect that to be, most probably into beginning of 2025 might be time horizon, but that will be already very ambitious.
Thank you. So I think that you were in Africa, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
yeah,
ago,
exactly.
right? So, I mean, we know that climate change is going to impact different regions differently. I mean, certainly the physical manifestations are going to be different. There are obviously also different political realities and fiscal capacity and financial capacity. How do we all work together collectively when you probably see the huge differences, between regions in terms of both the risk and the capacity to mitigate?
This is extremely important. Of course, we share the planet, but we have different perspective. And I just had a really great, insight when we had our annual meeting in Singapore in April. And, coming from the global north or from Europe, it's all about transformation, it's about transition and, talking about challenges. How can we, set up paths that our companies will benefit from all the opportunities that come from the change. But adaptation or anything else about that we are already facing climate change is something we neglect completely. So being in Singapore and a lot of Global South representatives were around, a lot of also from Asia, but also from Africa. And I just remember that the focus have shifted when so many people from the Global South were around, because there it was about adaptation. It was about surviving as of today. So I think Global North and Global South have to get together in order to mix and coordinate both perspectives. It's of course about mitigating climate risk and at the same time and get ready for the change. At the same time, global earth warming has already started, and we will, to a certain extent, it will continue. So we have to be aware of adaptation, be it Global South or Global North. Having said that, it's clear that liquidity is in Global North, but less really a little only in the Global South. So at the same time, because I do not always want to talk about risks today, I also want to talk about opportunities. I think the volumes that are needed for adaptation and transformation, Global North and Global South, are so huge that most probably only 10% will be covered by public money. So the huge question is, how can we mobilize private money for all the investments that needs to be done, be it adaptation or be it transformation? And that's something we at the NGFS also will have a look at, how to mobilize more private capital. So far, just in a nutshell, why doesn't it work? It doesn't work because for private investors, the risk-return profile does not fit. Risk is estimated as being too high and the return too low. And now with raising interest rate, why should I as an investor go to a vulnerable region when I have the opportunity to buy a sovereign bond of the region I'm at home or whatsoever, right? So that is really difficult, but I think in the upcoming events, we really have also to shift from only talking about public money. We really have to focus on how we can involve private sector and mobilize much more private money.
And who are the actors that should actually be trying to make that work? I mean, a lot of the focus is on the multilateral
it
things,
is.
but
so I think what we have to do is, I think we have to, well, there is this product of blended finance. I mean, that's for you, those of you who've never heard of it. It is practically a mixture of public and private money. And so you bring a little bit of public money on the table, taking away some risk, and hopefully you trigger private money. This instrument is not new, but it needs to be reviewed, because what we've seen is that still, although MDBs and others are really offering a lot of blended finance opportunities to get into it, but investors are not so much interested in those products. So what we really have to think of, how can we really improve this mixed finance, right? So that there is a standard for blended finance, so that private investors are interested in being involved.
So I want to shift a little bit to ask you about biodiversity, because I know that you also came to New York in part for the launch of the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures. This is an area where I think the collective knowledge in the space is rising very rapidly. At the same time, I think that linking it to investment value, kind of what's the transmission channel, what is actually the chain and the links to make it more tangible for companies and for investors is still something that's going to be work in progress for a while. I just wanted to understand from your perspective, from a financial regulations perspective, how you think about nature-related risks.
Yes, we started to deal with nature-related risks, I think, last year at the Network for Greening the Financial System. And we fully got aware that we do not know anything, right? And that was quite shocking. And so what we've done, and we realized we should know something, right? And so we started, and it's so complex. And so what we did in the first row was to, and we published it last week, to frame a conceptual framework. So basically what we did is the very basic, to define what is nature, what are nature-related risks. So to have a common language, a common understanding, what are we talking about? It sounds so simple, but be aware of even that is extremely difficult. The next step then would be to, and that's the big thing to do, is how we gonna measure risk, how we gonna identify the dependencies, and this is all about dependency, the dependency on nature asset from different industries. So be it the dependency on water for so many industries, or let me take the pharmaceutical industry, that are dependent on biodiversity, right? There are big numbers of really important pharmaceuticals that depend on biodiversity. So, and only once we've, I wouldn't say cope with that, but have an idea of that, right? What are the metrics? Because the main difference to climate is that you not only have an idea about metrics because it's carbon-based. Here we do have completely different mechanisms of steering different developments. So it's extremely complex, and only then we might think of, okay, how can we supervise that? So just to be extremely open and honest, we are far away from understanding the dependencies and how to measure it and what to do with it. Maybe a last point, I guess that many in the room also, and that's also with the central banks, we struggle already to get into climate change risk, right? And also the industry, I mean, the debate about scope 3, listen how exhausting that is for many, many of you. And now I come and tell you, well, but wait about, we'll also deal with nature, and that's much more complex. And as you can imagine that, I see smiling faces here. I think the challenge is to cope with both. And even at the central bank area, I mean, we are all busy with climate. So how are we not gonna manage to take also some time for nature? That's the big challenge the public and the private sector will have.
So I know we're coming to the end. I did want to ask you about the NGFS. I mean, I think that the group has really accomplished tremendously over the past few years. But from your perspective, what are you the most proud of? Looking back on some of the work that's been done, as well as when you start in 2024 as the chair, what are the priorities that's on your agenda?
Yeah, maybe I'm proud, because I think we started with 8 central banks and supervisors globally, and we are now 130. And in December we'll celebrate our 6th birthday. So that's I'm a mother, and if I would have thought about this potential before a kid goes to school, that's just amazing, right? So
Genius child.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So that's great. And that shows that we have global tension, that globally central banks are very much aware of that is something they have to deal with from the risk perspective, because we are always been asking, is it mission creep? No, it's not. It's about a financial risk. That's what we are dealing with. Looking ahead, what is our focus? Definitely the scenarios will be kept with the new data and the new developments. Short-term scenarios we'll introduce, and then nature-related risks, but also transition and adaptation finance will be on our agenda.
That's a lot.
It is. Yeah.
Well, we're very much looking forward to it, and thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.